to fall on those folks. Now, this is from, I'm trying not to do much editorializing, but I'm getting tired and it's almost time to go, so let me just let it out. Now, I want you to understand, although I don't believe white folks are inherently evil, I do not care for white people. I don't like white women. I don't even like white sheets on my bed. But I want you to know that I do not think that they are inherently evil. To me, that's silly. Right? That's to me. Now, I could be wrong. That may make some people mad. But I do think that it is important that we be able to reason together. Right. That we be able to talk about anything, right? That we submerge our own individual, ideas for the collective. Now, that's what it's about. If we can't do that, we can't move forward. Right. If we're so dogmatic and so narrow in our views, how can we move forward as a people? That's right. Think about that. Teach, brother. Now, this is a black man also from India, from a civilization called the Kushan. The Kushan dynasty. Next. I know some folks believe white people come from Pluto. You've seen this before. I show this one all the time. Next. This is a black man who was introduced into India directly as a slave. And you have about 4 migrations into India. You have black people as the first Indians, little bitty black folks, Batwa, Mutwa. Sometimes you call them pygmies, Negritos. In various parts of Asia, they're known as Akta or Etta. Samang, Sakai, right? Andamanese. And then you have larger black folks with straight to wavy hair, like the Australians. And then you have another group of black people that came and introduced large cities, urbanization, written languages, and what have you. I call them the Dravidians. And then you have one other group that have come there directly as slaves, primarily from East Africa. They were called the Sidis. And this is one such black man. He was born in 1575 in Gondar, Ethiopia, same place Dr. Ben was born. And he was taken to Asia as a slave, or he became a slave, and ultimately he became a king in the West Indian state of Gujarat. You can see their descendants in South India in a place called Karnataka. I've seen it with my own eyes, in Janjira Island, and there were some rough Africans, fierce warriors. It is said that if they would guard the ships of Muslims that went to Mecca and Medina from India, and it is said if just one of these brothers was aboard the ship, no pirate would dare molest that ship. They were said to be ferocious in battle, and they would field up to 50,000 of them when it came to going to war. They were tough. The head of them was called the Admiral of the Indian Ocean and received an annual stipend of 300,000 rupees every year. What was the brother's name again? That's Malik Ambar, King Ambar. He built all his monuments out of black stone. He built the post office. He built the mosque. He sent an African ambassador to the court of Persia. And he did something that endeared him to me today. He put historians on pension. Right? They didn't have to worry about nothing. Bless that brother's heart. Right? Next. Now let's look at black people in India today. You've seen some of these slides, you'll see them again. It ain't like they're on CNN and all that stuff. This is Runoko talking now. Here's my main man right here. We want to start with this brother. Looks like just like some folks in the audience today. Dr. Ben wrote a 4-volume book in the mid-1980s called They All Look Alike. And he had something there. Now let's look at some of those people. Let's go through these quickly. We're not going to take a lot of time. Next. I don't show this one too often. I don't know how old that sister is, but she's mighty wrinkled up. A lot of wisdom, I would imagine, there. Next. Now, this brother looks more like the black folks in Australia. And they are to be found in central India. Most of them are in south central India. Isn't that deep? South central. And I'm not talking about Fox TV, the television show. South central. Next. 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 There's my lady right there. Most of these photographs were taken in the early part of the 20th century. The British had colonized every part of India, and they sent ethnologists to write up every part of the country. There's a 4-volume book from North India. There's a 4-volume book, I have a copy of it, from Central India, and there's a 9-volume text from South India. All of them deal with tribes and caste. And that's where I got a lot of these photographs from. That's how I got into India. At UCLA about 1980, I just started going through book after book after book, old books, and some pictures started falling out of some of those books. And I began to make slides of those. I want to encourage you to do the same thing. begin to document it. Yes, sir, brother, if it's real brief.
Would she be regarded as an untouchable?
It's very possible. Now you have the caste system. There are 4 major castes. And it's said that each caste came from a different part of God's body. The topmost, and each caste is identified with a color. The topmost caste supposedly comes from the mouth of God, or Brahma. And therefore the castes are called the Brahmins. That caste is identified with the color white. Those are the poets and priests in society. You have a priestly aristocracy. Beneath them you have another group called the Kshatriyas, coming from the shoulders or biceps of God, identified with the color red. They're the soldiers and administrators in society. Then you have the Vaishya, coming from the thighs of God, identified with, this is in the Rig Veda now, you can read it yourself, coming from the thighs of God. They are the farmers and merchants. And then you have the Sudras, regarded as untruth itself, coming from the feet of God, black, right? And they are supposed to work for the upper 3 castes in any capacity required. And then outside of them you have the outcasts or the untouchables. Now the castes have been, there are thousands of subcastes. And you know what else is cold-blooded now? Maybe the coldest part of all, even among the untouchables, there are degrees of untouchability. So some untouchables are less touchable than others. That's why they can't overcome the social structure, because they're all divided into little bitty groups. Not all the untouchables are black either. Most of them are, but I've seen some untouchables that could pass for white folks. That's like a blue moon, though. How many people have seen a blue moon? Not many people. You will see one every now and then. Most of the untouchables are black, but the untouchables, also called the outcasts, Mohandas Gandhi called them Harijans, which means children of God. That's an offensive term to most of these people. Most of them call themselves, if you could just hold it, brother, most of them call themselves Dalit, D-A-L-I-T, meaning crushed, broken, and oppressed. Those are the more militant ones. There's a bad publication that comes out of India called Dalit Voice, the voice of the persecuted nationalities denied human rights. Comes out twice a month. It is $40 a year in annual subscription rate. It is the most effective voice of the black untouchables of India. And guess who's the United States representative for it? I am. I encourage you to subscribe to it. $40 a year is a lot of money for them. Right? The untouchables, she may be an untouchable. Next. And these people are from South India here. Now this sister is called a tribal person. Tribal people are treated like untouchables. But these are people who have really never been assimilated into the Hindu social structure. Lots of dignity, lots of pride. It is said that these bangles represent wealth. Now the term Dalit encompasses all of that. It encompasses tribal people and people in the city slums who are called untouchables. By the way, women in India are viciously exploited. If you're black and you're an untouchable and you're a woman. Next. AIDS is spreading there left and right too. And it's heterosexual sex that's causing it. Dalit women, black women, untouchable women are literally in some cases chained up and treated as sexual slaves, and they're taken from village to village. And as they move, they take the AIDS virus with them. It is said by the year 2000 there will be more AIDS cases in India alone than all of Africa put together. And these are primarily black people, because when the lights go down, all that stuff about untouchability gets thrown out the window. And black women are viciously exploited. In the city of Bombay, prostitution is legal. And the municipal government of Bombay is literally the pimp. They get a cut. And most of the women are young black women, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. The ones at 15 and 16, they really look all used up. I have it documented on video. I'm going back to India eventually, okay? And I hope to lead an African-centered tour there at some point in time. You know, I hope some of us will be able to go, because black people in India are very much interested in African people here. I understand that there was recently a conference where the leadership of the untouchables of India declared themselves a part of the African Revolution. It's in India. That's something Marcus Garvey would be proud of.
That's right.
See, as difficult as things are today, we are living in a very exciting time, because we're living in a time where we are clarifying our identity, who we are. White folks have thrown everything they have got at us, and we have survived it. Now, how do we move from the level of survival to a level of conquest? I want to be in power again. That's what I want. That's what Runoko Rashidi is about. So that we are defining also or developing a new kind of scholarship. This is not the kind of scholarship that is going to be taught at Harvard or Yale. This is the kind of scholarship that we need to liberate ourselves, though. I believe that liberation will come from our community and not a college campus. You can clap for that, because I believe that. Now, this didn't come out very good, and this is the first time I've ever shown this slide. This is supposed to be an Indian gypsy. You do have people called gypsies in India, and I met some of them in South Central India, too. Some people believe that that gypsies are ultimately derived from Egypt. Egypt, gypsy. Next. These folks are called Vedas, and they are a very ancient group of people. They actually live in the country that today is called Sri Lanka, to the south of India. Next. Same thing. Next. We're back in India now. Next. It's supposed to be a holy man. Next. Next. Nice picture. We need to see more children at some of these programs. I spoke at a conference in Tacoma, Washington last month. It was literally a children's conference. We always talk about how the youth are the future. Where are they at? Somehow or another we have to integrate them in the programs that we're involved in. Somehow we have to do that. I don't know how. Next. Now I do not believe is an untouchable. You do have some black people in higher social structures. You even have some black Brahmins, but there are not many. In fact, there's a proverb in India, beware of a black Brahmin. Next. This is a cave in South India. This is where a lot of the people were driven because they didn't want to submit to white domination. And they live there today. Next. Now, when I went to India, I stayed in the cities all the time. And I saw some areas, some slum areas. I was taken to one slum area by a member of the Dalit Panthers, their version of the Black Panther Party. Yeah, I went to their office and met with them. I met with the leadership of a group called the Dalit Liberation Army. The Dalit Liberation Army. They know about Garvey. I found somebody gave me a biography written in the Indian language of Langston Hughes. They had copies of Roots over there. We need to understand the impact that we have on other people around the world. People be looking at us. They know about Soul Train. Don Cornelius, I was ashamed of that, okay? Yeah, I don't want to be identified with that. Certain black folks, I don't want to be identified with. I don't want to be identified with Clarence Thomas, Michael Jackson.
OJ.
Now that could be the Negro of the Year. I ain't gonna mess with OJ because that'll take us on another trip. This is a sister from South Central India. Michael Jackson, we could talk about him all night. Toyota, all of them. Next. All right, this is another holy man. That's what Lynn Jeffries called, what's her name? LaToya? He calls her Toyota Jackson. I like that. Next. Next. Keep going. She's pretty. Now, this is one of my favorite pictures, too. This is taken from a book called The Tribes and Castes of the Southern Provinces of India by a guy named Edgar Thurston. And this is a tribal person, and he reminds me so much of the Maroons. Now, the Maroons are black folks who refused to submit to slavery. In Belize in February, I was taken and I lectured in a place called Dangriga. And these are things I'm very proud of. Very proud of that. All right? Never thought I would be doing this. And love it. Don't make a lot of money, but my time is free. And I feel like I'm doing something very noble. I feel like I'm doing something that's going to survive me. There's another question. When we talk about Kemet, we might talk about Imhotep, we might talk about Aha, we might talk about Khufu. These are people that lived 5,000 years ago. They did something so significant that 5,000 years after their death, we still talk about them today. That is something very profound to think about. What are we doing that people will be talking about 5 minutes after we're gone? Not 5,000 years. Some people be glad to see us gone. But to be talking about immortality, it is said to speak the names of one's ancestors is to make them live again. Next. Now there's one I don't show very often. These are all in India now. Next. That's Satya Sai Baba. Now, he's a Sudra. He's not an untouchable. He's a Sudra. And you notice I used the word deliberately, untouchable. That's what they wanted me to use, although they don't like the word. I said, hey, man, brothers and sisters, what can I do? And they said, what we want you to do, Brother Runoko, more than anything else, is to tell people about us. Tell the world what's going on. And they deliberately like the word untouchable because, I see, we're running out of time. It speaks to their condition. Next. There's a heck of a picture. And that's a Brahmin, uppermost caste. Next. Fine sister. Next. This is B.R. Ambedkar. He's the national liberator of the untouchables, you might say. He came to the United States in a relatively liberal time. He went to Columbia University. The greatest man, perhaps in the 20th century of India. He and Gandhi hated each other. And most of the untouchables of India hate Gandhi. They feel like he's the worst enemy of black people in the history of Asia. I want you to think about that when Martin Luther King's birthday comes up and Gandhi is trotted out. Gandhi was not a man of nonviolence. When Gandhi was in South Africa, he participated actively in war against black people, referred to black people as Kafirs, and did everything he could to sabotage the movement of untouchables in India. He is no friend of ours. He read the book Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington and came to the United States. Next. This is a photograph I took. I'm not a very good photographer, but I'm glad this one came out. This is the office in a place called Javadi on the outskirts of Bombay of the Dalit Panthers. They take their inspiration directly from the Black Panther Party. The Panthers need to know that. Those brothers and sisters paid a tremendous price. It's important to understand that the price we pay is not in vain. That it means something, that it has significance. You may not agree with everything they did. Brother asked me earlier what I thought about the Nation of Islam. I don't agree with everything the nation does, but I respect the Nation of Islam because they're trying to do something. What are you trying to do? That's right. Besides being critical, running your mouth, what are you doing? When you leave this room tonight, when you leave this building, when you leave the good life, what are you going to do? You see what I'm doing. I know what Astainu's doing. I know what Jamal Gori's going to do. What are you going to do? How are you going to affect the liberation of black folk? That's an individual responsibility. It was said in Kemet that ignorance is evil. In America, ignorance is bliss. Because when you are ignorant, you can be irresponsible. With knowledge comes responsibility. Once you learn something, what you gonna do? Black people, what you gonna do? We talking about I need a leader. What are you going to do? Next. That's my sermon for tonight. But we got to do some preaching.
You're right, though, brother. You're right, though.
Now, this is an Aryan. This is an Indo-European. This is representative of the people that invaded India 4,000 years ago. Next. And this is a person called, this is another tribe of Indo-Europeans, a representative called the Peoples of the Sea. They invaded Egypt 3 times in dynasties 19 and 20. Next. Pick it up. Buddhism comes as a Reformation religion. The earliest icons of the Buddha show him to be black, and they also reflect the fact that Buddhism does not recognize caste distinctions, and they became very popular among the black people of India. Next. These are just depictions of the Buddha. Next. Next. Check that one out. That's from India. Next. Now, these are black folks that have almost been wiped out too as a result of contact with white folks. And they are from an island chain in the Bay of Bengal off the coast of India called the Andaman Islands. Next. There are only a few thousand of them left, and they're very much like the Tasmanians too. Next. That's a good one. These are just little black people. Next. In the Andaman Islands, off the eastern shores of India. Okay, that's who I saw when I was growing up in the cartoons.
He looks inherently evil.
He looks inherently evil. Are white people inherently evil?
Yeah.
Do they have an ingrained racist nature?
Yeah.
You might as well have a good time. Next. He does look evil, don't he? Yes. That's your friend. Next. Now, in Australia, I have to get some new slides from Australia. I got a bunch of pictures. I just have to have slides made of them. And, of course, this is from an old book, and he is on a reserve. In these many cases, black people are not allowed to leave these reserves. The situation of black folks in Australia may be very similar to the Native American. Native American is the only large group of people outside of Africans, I'll be honest with you, that I have great sympathy and respect for. That I feel like they have suffered as much as we have, and they are brothers and sisters. And a lot of our own blood is integrated with that of Native Americans. So the struggle of Australians is very similar to that. By the way, until recently, there are only like 5 or 6 black people in Australia who had any kind of formal university education. They have been abused. Next. Now, this is William Laney, the last Tasmanian. Man, he was 34 at that time. He died in 1869. Next. And that's Lala Rook. There are several books that have been written about her. Most of them have been published, however, in Australia and Tasmania. I have a few of them. I do have a large collection of pieces on Australia and Tasmania. But just until recently, I was really not able to talk about it without just... Next. This is a sister from New Zealand. New Zealand, or Aotearoa, was also established as a British prison colony. Next. Ain't hardly none of them left either. Those people are called Maori. And then this sister's from Melanesia. Now, Melanesia, the islands of the South Pacific, by the way, the term Melanesia literally means black islands. Melanin. Melanie. Yeah. Melanie, I think, means black one or something like that. That's Greek. Melanos, or black. Now, I put her in here, and I got 2 or 3 others because slavery was also introduced there. Many people are not aware of that. White people also enslaved black people in Melanesia. They called it blackbirding. Next. And people were taken from one island to the other for slave purposes. Now, look at that, brother. Ain't that cold? I believe if I keep looking, I'm going to find some black people somewhere with blue eyes. You know why? Because I think we're the mother and father of all humanity, and we replicate all the human types. Everybody comes from us. Pardon? Some of them do? That's cold. Next. Now, I don't know if that's naturally blonde or what, but it certainly is interesting. We need to go check them out. If I wasn't so drawn to India, Australia and the South Pacific would be the area I'd be most interested in. Because that's something that nobody's doing any work on that I know of. Understand that. People say, Runoko, what do you think I should do? I'm interested in this. Find an area of focus. Find an area that has been relatively untapped so we can document the global experience of African people. And there are a lot of different parts of the world that we have not really effectively explored, so we can join hands with our people around the world. That's something you can be proud of. And then you can come up here and people can clap for you. Next. And of course, that's my main man from Hawaii, Kamehameha I. They were almost wiped out by white folks. Another unfavorable, historically white-black relationship. Come on, a few more, we're going to get out of here. This is Liliuokalani. Now, Hawaii was intruded upon by British about 1788, I think by Captain Cook. And within 60 or 70 years, almost all the Hawaiians were gone. Same situation that affected black people in Tasmania, Australia, similar phenomenon in Hawaii. Next. Now, here's an area that has really not been looked upon too effectively. Another unfavorable case of white-black relationships, and that is black people in the Philippines. Now, you have black people there first, and then you have Far East Asians, Mongoloid types, which is, to me is an offensive word. In the Philippines, the Asian types are called Tagalog. Now, the blacks dominated until the Spanish came in the 1500s. In fact, the Philippines is named after Philip II of Spain. I always thought that was an indigenous name, but it's named after Philip II. And these little bitty black people were fierce, and they fought those Spanish left and right. It said when they killed a Spaniard, they would party for a week. Next. Now, these are from Vietnam. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever shown this slide before. They're called Annamites. And that's a whole group of black people right there.
Vietnam?
Vietnam. Central Vietnam. Next. These are from Malaysia. Next. Now, I'm just kind of giving you an introduction to the presentation I'm going to do at Church of Amun-Ra on 54th and 7th Avenue at 1 o'clock on January the 8th. I'd like for you to come down there. We'll continue. This is a black person. I've never even shown this slide before. Another black person from Malaysia. Next. These are from the Philippines. Next. That's Vietnam. I used that one deliberately. You see what happened to the face. They lost their history, so they died. Next. And last but not least, let me just show about 5 or 6 slides. I also wanted, although I did not get into it, I wanted to talk tonight about the Moors too. I wanted to give an example of unfavorable white-black relationships in Europe. The Moors were black people that dominated the European, the Iberians, Iberia, Spain and Portugal, and called it Al-Andalus or Andalusia, from 711 to 1492. Now, interestingly enough, the white Spanish Christians never ceased to resist. They called this the world's longest liberation movement. And over a period of 800 years, they finally conquered the black people in Spain, enslaved them. A lot of the first slaves to come to the Western Hemisphere did not come from Africa. There were black people enslaved in Spain and brought over here. The books of the Moors were burnt. It is said the Moors had everything it took to make a civilization great. And now nobody knows anything about it. You can get a videotape and educate yourself. This is a black Moorish warrior from North Africa. The name Moor survives in Mauritania and Morocco. Next. They still have slavery over there, by the way. This is a black Moorish warrior in Spain in the 9th century. Just about 5 minutes and we're done. Next. Another one, just a close-up. Next. This is a black Moorish saint. Now, not all the Moors were Muslims. Some of them converted to Christianity. This is Saint Maurice. Maurice, my man. I know he's here. All right, Maurice Beatty, who I have great respect for, by the way. Maurice was the holy patron saint of the patron saint of the Holy Roman Empire for about 300 years. They have shrines to Saint Maurice as far north as Latvia and Lithuania in the Baltic states, in Riga. Tough brother. Next. That's Saint Maurice in heaven. That's the banner of Saint Maurice above him. That's Saint Maurice and Saint George and the Dragon. Now, Saint George we all know about. Saint Maurice is much less known, but he's far more significant. That banner was used by the crusading armies of Europe in the wars against the Slavs. Maurice also had supposedly a spear that he brought with him that was supposedly the spear used to pierce the side of Christ. This is a black man in Central Europe, in Germany. And you can go there and see his shrines. I have not been to Germany yet. I hope to go there at some point in time, not to hang out with the Germans, but to examine black artifacts there, like the Black Madonnas. Right. Shrines to St. Maurice. You have a black presence everywhere. We're talking about world history, of which black people have been the primary movers since the beginning of time. That's St. Maurice. Next. And there he is again. That's St. Benedict the Moor. He founded the Benedictine order of monks in Sicily. That's St. Benedict. Yeah, next. And I think this is the last slide for tonight. This is also a black man, as you can see. He is a black knight. And this is from 15th century France. Brothers and sisters, what I tried to do in the course of the evening is to examine the question, are white people inherently evil? Do they have an ingrained racist nature? You draw the conclusions that you see fit. I wanted to examine it by looking at unfavorable white-black relationships historically. We tried to focus on India, ancient and modern. That's my thing. You know, I'm working on 3 books. One is a revised edition of this book, The African Presence in Early Asia with Van Sertima. It'll be the last book published by the Journal of African Civilizations probably for the next 5 years. I'm working on another book called The Nile Valley and Beyond. But in front of me, I can see another one that has not been written, and that is The African Presence in Asia, ancient and modern. Not just the past, but today. That is a frontier that has not been effectively documented. And then we went to Australia, and we wanted to look at another part of the world that's not effectively explored. Black people with straight to wavy hair textures that were almost wiped out by Europeans. And last but not least, perhaps the most brutal case of all, but an interesting case study, and that is Tasmania. We studied the Tasmanian devil. And we saw that every last black person in Tasmania was destroyed. We, you and I, us, have to be living monuments to those black people and show that they did not die in vain. That we have grown as a result of our knowledge of them, and we pledge ourselves